Hope by now you have taken a look at part one of this video on silence, where I spoke about that some silence is as bad or even worse than violence. But on the other side, we have heard many times that silence is golden, and indeed, some silence is priceless. Go back and recall in your life or with someone that you know, when you stayed silent or that other person stayed silent, and the environment, people around thanked, saying that thank you for not adding more confusion to this. Or go back to that time when you or somebody else paid attention to a conversation very silently without interfering. And then you had the sense of gratitude that, somebody really focused and paid attention. Or that time when you stayed silent and you knew, you had the faith that nature, God, whichever is the force, is going to resolve the situation. And you stayed still and you prayed or whatever you did, but you stayed still and that situation resolved. This does happen. So in some cases, silence does work. But it's a very important thing for us to understand how to choose between the silence that is violence and the silence that is priceless. So knowing when to stay silent and when to speak up is very important. So a gist of what I covered in the previous video, I'll share this, that when you are in relationships, when you are in the family, with friend circle or at workplace, etc., if you have not presented your point of view, if you have not been solution focused, if you have not safely expressed your emotions and had a conversation with the other party, if you have not worked to diffuse the situation to a point where you can bring it to dilution and solving the situation, the right moment, like I called out in that video, if you have not done these three things, and if you've just resigned that maybe silence is the best thing, that's the time that you need to know that silence is not your best option. If you've not tried, if you've not attempted, if you've not exercised your influence, if you've not exercised gentle, respectful, rational, decent right to conversation, if you've not done that, then silence is violence. This is what I covered in the previous video. But let's talk about the other part now. When is silence priceless? Let's take one of those first situations where the emotions are running high, people are fighting, or there's anxiety and there's already a lot of noise, and it's only action that can hold people together. Then that's one of those situations where you must stay silent. Quietly do what you need to do, especially if you're an important role holder in the team or organization, or in the family, or in the marriage, or in the friend circle. If you have to keep everybody together, and if action is the best thing that you can do, staying silent, then do that. That's very important. Or if you have someone who just needs to be heard, if somebody's venting, if somebody's very emotional, they're speaking up, let them speak up. Because many times when people listen to their own voice, the situation becomes clearer to them. So if that's the case, if somebody just needs to be heard out, then that's what it is. Or if that thoughtful pause, if that silence in the moment temporarily is going to give you clarity on what to do, you're not being impulsive, you're not being reactive, then that's also a very good silence. Or if you're watching a very mature person in front of you, an intelligent person, an experienced person, somebody who has 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years of experience, or has handled the family for a long time, or is a relative who's otherwise known to be very rational, or a friend who's known to be very intelligent, he or she's intentionally doing something that you classify as not to be done. Maybe they have a reason. Maybe they have a reason they're not telling you. Maybe they have a reason or a justification in that moment. Allow them to play that out. Just be there. Just watch. Don't be interfering, right? Or also what you need to understand, that if a mistake is very evident for somebody and a whole system is watching, and there is somebody who's a superordinate authority who's watching, or if God, nature, that is the sakshi of something that's really an unacceptable thing that is happening, and you're not the only one who can speak out, but you have this urge, maybe you need to hold that urge and see how life needs to play out. So hopefully you'll have all of these situations that I stacked up with you. There's one more thing that I want to leave with you. Many people in today's life, they try to advise people at the wrong time, or pick up a discussion at the wrong time. Remember, if a person is drowning, you don't teach the person how to swim. If a person is burning, you don't teach the person how to protect themselves against fire. Or if a person is in a very bad shape of health, that's not the time that you lecture them about healthy habits. When a person is falling, you support them, you pick them up. That's what you do. It requires an action, it doesn't require words. So remember this in your mind when you are around people. Don't get into this act of unnecessarily giving advice, etc. And that's when your silence really, really becomes priceless. Hope this makes sense. So there is a silence of wisdom when you're thinking before reacting. There is a silence of strength when you are holding back from any unnecessary argument in that situation. There is a silence of your presence when you're just being there for somebody. And there is a silence of patience when you're letting the system, nature, God act out and resolve the situation. So that's how you really understand your life and situation. So, part one of it, don't get into silence if you have not taken action, which I covered in the first video. And what I'm saying now is that if wisdom is required in the situation, or your strength is required in the situation, or if your presence is required in the situation, or if your patience is required in that situation, then choose silence. That silence will then be helpful. Remember, not all silence is equal. There is silence which will help others, like what I just shared in this video. And there is silence that can harm, which is what I shared in the previous video. Take both of these things together and choose silence carefully in life. Your thoughts are valuable. Sometimes your expressions help, but your silence is also valuable. Sometimes just action helps. Sometimes neither action nor words help. Sometimes just being in life helps, and you have to let system, nature, God take over. Hope you receive that wisdom, the courage, and the ability to know when to do what in your life. And that's where maturity essentially is going to happen to us.